This is an instrument made by a man named Keith Berg, he's Canadian. So these are among the most sought after instruments in the world. Top handful. Currently, I think there's an 8-year waiting list for these instruments. I'm the second owner. I was very lucky. It's one of these things where if somebody decides they finally want to sell one, it's probably because they've gotten another one. They've waited on the waiting list. Some people just re-up on the waiting list as soon as a new one comes up. And so this colleague decided he was ready to sell this one. And I traveled to go to his home and picked it up and paid him the asking price right away. Happy to get it. With good care, this should last many decades. Horns do age though, and not in a good way, like a violin. Horns, eventually the metal will thin a bit, but you can keep them going for 80 or 90 years. So this should be good for me. I have no intention of selling this until I'm not playing anymore. Daniel Rauch is another master horn maker, and he retired maybe 5 years ago. And his instruments are played by members of the TSO horn section as well. Our principal horn, Neil DeLand, plays a Rauch instrument. Now, it happens that I like Berg horns better. So is there a holy grail instrument out there? No, this is the one. I've got it. I don't need another instrument. In fact, every other horn that I try, I say no thank you. Now, maybe if I was in my 20s and I was constantly looking out for something new, I'd have a different mentality. But now what I want is my sound in a predictable way, and that's this instrument. So there are other fine makers out there, and for some reason, which is sort of hard to quantify, different regions of the world like different sounding instruments. So if you go to Europe, there are two predominant instruments in Europe: Alexander, which is a German company, and Paxman, which is a British company. And so you won't see a lot of Bergs, Keith Bergs, or Daniel Rauch instruments over there. Those are primarily North American instruments. And so there are still regional differences in sound. The sound of a North American player might be a little warmer, a little bit less focused on clarity and more interesting, more like a baritone than like a tenor. So my colleague, James McDonald, is a longtime horn player in Canada, and ever since Keith Berg started making horns back in the 70s, he's been on Keith Berg's waiting list. So constantly, he's been getting these horns. So I'm going to say about 6 or 7 years ago, he got delivery of a new instrument, and I just heard through the grapevine. It was one of those things, I think Facebook Messenger. Somebody said, "Oh, James is selling his Berg." And I thought, I need to get on that right now. So I did. It was as simple as that. I sent a Facebook message. He said, "Will you come to my teaching studio tomorrow?" I said, "Yes." I made the time, went and saw him. I picked up the horn, and that was as easy. It was that easy a decision for me. This has become my voice now. This is an instrument that's pitched in a certain key, okay? So it's pitched in the concert key of F, so it's here. So because I only actually have 3 valves to work with, and I play many more than 3 notes, how those notes are spaced really matters. So I'm not going to use any valves. So in a fine horn maker like Keith Berg, those are all going to be in tune. And when I go to the next harmonic series by adding just a little bit of tubing, so when I put that down, I get that much tubing, okay? So that takes me down 1 semitone. So as you can imagine, as I work my way through the harmonic series, I want all of those intervals to be perfectly in tune. And when you get to the level of the Toronto Symphony, you have to play in tune, right? And so if a violinist is working their way up the fingerboard like this, they practice hours and hours and hours just trying to get that interval correct. And for us, if we're going from the same one fingering to another, let's say I'm just going. Let's say that was a quiet ending of a Strauss piece, and if that was out of tune, that wouldn't sound like the Toronto Symphony anymore. So the instruments we play have to be the finest crafted instruments. Now, somebody like Keith Berg, I think he makes maybe 4 to 6 horns a year. So this is a handcrafted instrument. He takes pieces of brass and turns it into this, except for a couple of pieces that come from a bit more factory setting. Everything else is bent by the horn maker to his specifications. And that's what creates an in-tune instrument with a beautiful sound. So it's always this trade-off between intonation and sound. And also we want that sound to be in the lowest ranges and in the highest ranges. My voice. So I was a boy soprano in church, but I took it really seriously. And the best thing for me is that when I was in, I don't know, seventh grade or eighth grade, I was good. And so I would get hired for all these weddings. And so on the weekends, I'd be off, on Saturdays, I'd be off singing for these weddings, making like $40 to go and sing a wedding. For a seventh grader, I mean, I had a bike and a Nintendo. I was the cool kid because I was making that money. Of course, voices change. I had already started the horn when I was in grade 7 or 8. And I guess I started taking it seriously in about high school. But people are often like, oh, you're a musician. There's a piano over there. Go and play for us. No, I'm not the person you want to be playing the piano. I am very much a horn player and maybe a bit of a singer, but really this is how my music gets out is really just as a horn player. What I often say to students is that music is a social act. Because if you're just in your practice room practicing all by yourself, you might get proficient at the horn. But when it comes to making music, you have to be doing it for others, for people to listen. It's the equivalent of having a conversation. If there's nobody to speak to, you're not really having a conversation after all. So what I love about being a TSO musician is that what we do is we bring people together for good. We bring people together so they can share experiences together. I love listening to recorded music, but it's nothing like going to a live concert. And the thing about going to a live concert is that we share that experience with the people around us. And it's an incredibly powerful thing. 21 years into my life as a TSO musician, I'm still amazed at what can happen in a concert hall when everyone is listening to the same thing. It's really a powerful experience, and it's something that you can't really create anywhere else. Of course, I think sports does this. I'm a big sports fan. I love sports, specifically baseball, Formula One. I mean, I'm crazy about it. But those are very noisy environments, and it can be very exciting, but it's different for me. It's not often that large numbers of humans, 2,000 human beings get together and are perfectly quiet in musical moments. For me, that is incredibly powerful and something we don't do a lot of as a culture, as a society. I think it's a very important thing. Music is powerful because of people, not because of the greatness of the person that wrote it. I mean, yes, of course, it requires genius to write this music, but it doesn't matter if there aren't a group of people listening to it. It's possible to have amazing experiences with headphones on by yourself. Believe me, I've had them and I love that, but it's very, very different. It's really a community experience when you get together and do these things.